So we're ready to go live, Oscar.
Recording in progress.
You're ready to go live.
All right, I'd like to welcome everybody to the Thursday, June 3rd Planning Commission meeting. We can have a roll call.
Chair Dennison,
Here.
Vice Chair Pevsner, Commissioners Gellis,
Here.
Hutt,
Here.
and Spears.
Present.
I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Also move.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously. Next is approval of the minutes. Are there any proposed changes to the minutes as presented? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve as presented.
I'll move.
I'll second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Next up is our council liaison report.
I have one quick item. At the last planning commission, commissioners asked about the ability to meet in person. So we know that the order is going to be expected to be lifted on June 15th. We don't know all of the details yet, and council was thinking about meeting in person on June 22nd. They are actually going to, or we are actually going to meet we were going to meet inside on the 22nd, and that has since changed to outside for the 22nd. So it will probably be July before we meet indoors.
Thank you. Next, we have community input. At this time, any person may address the Planning Commission concerning an item that is not on the agenda. The Commission welcomes your attendance and participation. When addressing the Commission, please begin by providing your name and address for the record. Please keep comments to no more than 5 minutes to assure an orderly and timely meeting. Copies of the agenda are available for your convenience on the city's website. State legislation, Government Code Section 54954.2, limits the Commission's ability to take action on specific requests. Government Code Section 54954.2 limits the placement of items on the agenda for action 72 hours prior to meetings, except for specific findings. No action or discussion may be undertaken by the Planning Commission on any item if not posted on the agenda, except that commissioners or staff may briefly respond to statements made or questions posed by the public, or a commissioner or staff liaison may ask a question for clarification or make a brief report on his or her own activities. A commissioner or the commission itself may provide a reference to staff to report back to the commission at a subsequent meeting concerning any matter, or may direct staff to place a matter of business on a future agenda. Should you choose to participate in this meeting, the phone number to dial is 669-900-9128, meeting ID 851-8278-0306 with the password 091024. If you have dialed in, *9, or from your computer, indicate you would like to speak by raising your hand. If you are watching on TV or on the live stream, please mute your TV or computer speakers to avoid feedback. It appears as if we have a panelist who raised their hand. I think that panelist is actually here for a later part of the meeting. Do we have any other panelists who have dialed in for the call?
It does not appear that we have anybody who's dialed in at this time.
All right. This was for community input for items not on the agenda. We will again open community comment during agendized items. At this time, we will move to a disclosure of site visits and ex parte contacts, if any.
I visited the site. I walked around the city yards.
I did the same. The interesting thing that I heard or learned on my visit, and please correct me if I recount this incorrectly, but most of the work that has been done there as far as backfilling the dirt has been from the dam project, not as part of the topic that we're considering tonight. Any other comments? All right, with that, we can move to conditional use permit 21-01, a solar photovoltaic project located in the city yards. Does the city staff have a presentation for us?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we do. We have a dual presentation by Josh Wolf, who's our associate planner, and James Carlson from Public Works, who's our management analyst. And we also have a representative also available to provide comments or answer questions as well. So we have the PowerPoint queued up, and Josh will go ahead and continue with this.
Good evening, commissioners. Right away, tonight we'll be reviewing the solar photovoltaic project in the city yards. I'm going to hand it right off to management analyst James Carlson, who will be introducing the project, and later on I'll be talking about the findings for our conditional use permit.
Greetings, Chair Dennison and members of the Planning Commission. I'm very happy to be here tonight, and I want to introduce a couple of other members to represent this project. First, you have Jose Reynoso, who is the Director of Utility Services, and he can answer questions about the site and some of the early determinations on location. We also have from the Rec Solar Company, Trevor Lucchesa, and also Thomas Simo and Amanda Camps from Duke Energy. And they will be available to provide some very good details and other assistance with helping me and Joshua answer your questions. I got to tell you that it's a very exciting evening. We've been looking at a solar project in the city of Sierra Madre for well over 4 years now. In fact, in March of 2017, I brought a completely different project to the Planning Commission. Subsequently, that project did not pencil out. It included some solar parking canopies and something similar to what we're doing in the yard. So we kind of started at the drawing board, and working with Rec Solar after an exhaustive RFP process, I think we found a very rewarding project. This project would accomplish 990,000 kilowatt hours of energy offset every year. That translates to 715 tons of carbon dioxide emissions that will be avoided every year, translating to 1,500 barrels of oil that will not be consumed. This is also an important concept with this is there is no money out of pocket. This is a power purchase lease. So there's no money out of pocket for the city of Sierra Madre. We will begin to see our energy savings the first year at approximately 43,000, but every year it's going to go up. And year 20, we're looking at $255,000 dollars of savings per year. And that's using the sun to move the water throughout Sierra Madre and to our residents, offsetting about 40% of the energy that we're using every year. Next slide. So the basics, it's a ground mounted solar photovoltaic array. There are about 1,400 fixed tilted solar panels, each mounted to the footing fixed on grade. Each of the fixtures is about 6 feet high. The two infill retention bases situated immediately north of Dapper Field was the optimal place that we found to do this project. And this solar project is pretty unique to come in front of the Planning Commission. The approval may be governed by Sierra Madre Municipal Code 17.60.030A, as it is a public utility facility. A little bit of background, the City Council itself did approve this project and directed us to sign this agreement back in January of 2020. And part of the reason we had to take that step before coming to you is a part of the agreement was for them to do the environmental work. And so we needed that environmental work to come to you with the CUP and the consideration of the environmental work. Next slide, please. This photo shows the location of the project, just north of Dapper Field. Some of the details are included on the right of the screen. I think we all know that the neighborhood is basically R1, but because of Sierra Madre Middle School, there's also an institutional component in the neighborhood. Next slide. And I'm not going to talk too much about all of the photos that you're going to see real quick, but I wanted everybody to get an idea. Not many people get to go behind the gate at City Yards. This is what I think the lower basin looks like. I was looking at with Chair Dennison yesterday. And this is a photo of the area looking northeast. Next slide. This would be a photo looking south from just above the very top of where the project will be. You can't quite see Dapper, but right on the other side of the hill is where the Dapper baseball field is. Next slide. And finally, here we have the general design layout of the photovoltaic arrays and how they will be situated on the place where there were two basins, and kind of shows the boundary around, shows the proximity to some of the other borders at the parcel. There are more pictures and information in your packet, but we didn't want to go through all of them. So next slide. Wanted to give you an idea about the elevation. There is a very advantageous natural slope at this location. There is also a good amount of clearance and openness to be able to get the most out of the equipment that we're going to be installing here. Next slide. And then you have a couple photo simulations top down from north looking south, and then from the east looking west. We can always go back to these slides here if you have any specific questions on them. And with that, I'll go ahead and hand it over to Joshua.
All right, and part of approving this project is the findings for conditional use permit. The first being that the proposed use is adequate in size and shape, wherein 2 ill-used retention basins will be filled. The energy generated by the solar array would offset that cost, and that the proposed use is adequate in topography and location, in that there will that where the retention basins will be filled to level up the sloping terrain, the panels will be mounted on footings on the ground within city property. Secondly, that the site is sufficiently accessible from both Sierra Madre and Grandview Avenue, and is not anticipated to generate any traffic, and that it will not be manned during normal operation. Additionally, it is adjacent to city yard facilities, not requiring public road access. Third, there is no anticipated detriment to the public health, safety, or general welfare, and that the settling basins being filled are ill-used. A mitigated negative declaration was provided with an initial study stating that the project is less than significant impact on the environment with mitigated measures. Fourth, that the need for the facility is demonstrated through the approximate 1 gigawatt hours of energy demand offset per year, which equates to 715 tons of carbon dioxide emissions elimination per year. And fifth, that the proposed project is consistent with the general plan, specifically Objective C31 in providing power infrastructure and Objective R22 in attaining safe air standards. And finally, that the proposed use would benefit the public interest in providing sustainable solutions for power infrastructure. Tonight, the Planning Commission can approve Resolution 2108. This is approval of Conditional Use Permit 2101 and adoption of initial study with the mitigated negative declaration. They may approve this resolution with modifications, or they may continue the project to provide the applicant with direction. Staff is recommending that the Planning Commission take the following action on Resolution 2108 to approve the conditional use permit and adopt the initial study with the mitigated negative declaration. That concludes my presentation, and as James has stated, staff is here. We have myself, Management Analyst James Carlson, Utilities Director Jose Reynoso, and staff members from Rex Solar to answer any questions the Commission may have.
Are there any questions for city staff from the commissioners?
I have a few.
Oh, go ahead, Bob.
So the two unused basins are below grade if you're on Sycamore, or if you're looking over from those single-family residences that are to the west. Are both basins going to be filled in? We have a drawing that shows it's going to be a slope, but are you going to use the fill below the grade so that these will not be visible from any point inside the residential community?
Thank you, Commissioner Spears. That is definitely the intent, and that was the original design. We have talked about terracing the two different basins to see if that would get us even more hidden from those houses to the west. Currently, we are just talking about filling in the one, keeping it below grade, assuming the 6-foot high panels, assuming the fauna screen with the intent, and even the backup from the environmental study that these panels will not be seen from the residential areas.
So you're going to use the berm that's already there to hide them?
Yes.
Okay. So my next question is that there's a walking path that now cuts between Dapper Field and comes out at Sycamore. Is that going to be filled in or obstructed?
That's going to be untouched by this project. The Department of Public Works will continue to make that path accessible as well as safe. There's a lot of times we have to go in and fill in some ruts, but we know the community likes to use it.
Yeah, it seems to be popular. And the city has put up fencing on Grandview that just barely turns the corner on Sycamore. The black fencing, they took down the chain link, I believe, is now all gone. Is that black fencing going to continue down the length of city yards to die at the end of Sycamore?
That's a good question. I'm wondering if Jose might know a little bit more of that detail on the totality of that fencing.
So the fencing is going to be completed with just, I don't think they installed the gates, but the fence that you see in place now, that's as much fence as was budgeted for this project.
Okay. All right. And so there is a chain link that goes the length of Sycamore. to the corner at Grandview. So that'll stay. I have one other question is that we're already hearing rumors that this summer we're going to have brownouts and power outages. Will the city be able to pump water with this array in the event that there is no energy coming into the municipality?
Well, the water operations are exempt from all of the brownouts and PSPS activities. But in the event of an accidental or unanticipated power outage, this project could assist. Now, down the line, we would like the project does use some battery storage to enhance the output of the project. The battery storage that's included with this would not suffice as a backup generator at this point. That is a future consideration that we were going to be looking at to see if it would be feasible, even if it was just 2 or 3 of the wells, if we could hook up an emergency generation storage with this project. But this project alone does not have that capability.
So right now the answer is no, but it may happen. I mean, suppose that the power goes out for 2 days.
Right.
You know, that's not an unreasonable occurrence in Sierra Madre.
And we would use our traditional emergency generation until we hopefully will be able to attain 2 or 3 days with the solar project. To use a planning or building term, the project is being stubbed out in anticipation for this addition. But I want to make it clear that this project itself would not be able to do back emergency generation for 2 or 3 days.
Okay, thank you.
Can I add a little bit of extra background on that for Commissioner Spears? There is a bill in the legislature. This does not answer your short-term question, Commissioner, but it does from a long-term perspective. AB 418, it is going to create a community power resiliency program, a grant program that will allow counties, cities, special districts, and others to create a local resilience network. So I think that there will be funding available in the future for us to address those PSPSs.
Okay. How long will our water last if they turn off the power? Because it's gravity fed from the reservoirs. Jose, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. So typically, we have a power outage. I'll give you an example from when we had the windstorm. All the irrigation systems were off. So irrigation is really what what draws a lot of our water. Just using water for essential use. Our supply can last 2 to 3 days, maybe even longer. The community will usually come together in a crisis like that and limit the water use to essential use. So if our reservoirs are at about 50% capacity, 2 to 3 days, maybe even more.
Okay, cool.
And we do have our emergency backup generator at the yard that we run and can run our whole operation. So even without the solar power generation, I mean, we're in good shape as far as backup energy.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. Can you explain to us how the drainage is going to work? I saw that there's a slope going from the north to the south. Is there still going to be some water infiltration, or is it all just going to drain away? And if it does drain, where is that water going to drain to?
I just took a look at it, reviewed it before the meeting, and if Trevor wants to add anything to it, from what I saw, especially described in the environmental report, there could still be some infiltration. It kind of depends on the professionals that are going to do the site preparation and compaction and that type of thing. And I imagine just for stormwater quality that any drainage from this is going to be treated like any drainage anywhere on the yard, and it will go into a basin or some type of pre-treatment before it would ever be and deposited into the MS4 or to the gutter or to the street or things like that. That is one of the jobs I have, is to monitor all of the runoff from the city yards and to do inspections and such. I don't know specifically off the top of my head the drainage direction or the avenues that are going to be selected during site prep, but maybe someone from Rec Solar could help.
I can add a little bit to that, James.
Yeah.
So right now, the access road that you're most likely familiar with that drives up to the spreading basins, right where the Dapper Field is at, there's a little diversion that works to capture any water that's coming down that road and diverts it into one of our spreading basins. And then we have an annual maintenance program where we remove a lot of that silt and sediment to improve infiltration. But yeah, water that's diverted, hopefully will be diverted onto that road, and then it'll be captured in one of our spreading basins, and it should never make it out to the MS4.
Okay, great, thanks. One other thing we heard at a prior meeting was one of the nearby neighbors has concerns about the construction process and how noisy it'll be, or whether it'll make dust. And a lot of that was talked about in the environmental doc, but just wondering if you could discuss that a little bit so that neighbors can be sure they're not going to be impacted unduly.
Yeah, well, the city of Sierra Madre does have its construction hours. Those will be followed. We also have rigorous dust control methods, and we will. The thing is, this project is happening right in front of Jose. So if there's going to be any dust flying around, he's going to know about it. Any noise, any of the traditional concerns, vermin or anything like that will have to be mitigated during the construction activities, just pretty much as any other construction activity would happen.
Okay, great. You spoke a little bit about the plan that we saw a few years back, was it 2017? You said, does this mean that plan's dead for good and we're never going to put panels over the parking lot at City Hall, or is that a maybe for the future?
Okay, well, Council Member Parkhurst is going to like this. That 2017 project is dead. There is a brand new project coming from the Clean Power Alliance that is considering the solar parking canopies at the City Hall and Public Safety rear lot, including some mountings on those buildings. That is a wonderful opportunity for us, again, at no cost to the city. We kind of scrapped some of those parking canopies because of the construction cost is quite a bit. And when we were looking for a return on investment in that 2017 project, it was a little bit too far out. And that's why this one's much more appealing.
Is there any hope that in this project or that project or otherwise, we're going to get some electric car charging at City Hall, at the baseball field parking lot, the big parking lot behind the shops? We could really use some electric car charging stations in town.
Yes, in fact, that is a project I'm working on now with one of my newest team members here at City Hall, Alondra, who is fantastic. And I also have a 12-year-old volunteer expert in the community that's helping me with this. And her father have actually ripped out their entire Porsche and turned it into an electric vehicle. So that is a very exciting topic that we are pursuing quite a bit.
Fabulous, fabulous. Thank you very much.
I've got a question. How long will the construction and for the solar array take?
That's a good question. I'm wondering if Trevor might have a little bit more information on that. The site preparation would be the first item. And I'll see if Trevor has any more detail about the duration of construction.
Sorry, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, how's it going? This is Trevor Lucchesa with Duke Energy, Senior Project Manager, working with James on this project over the past few months. Regarding the construction, likely we mobilize first with our civil crew, get all our SWEP items in place, and kind of tagging on what was asked too about the site. In the civil drawings, they're balancing the site pretty much. So the high spot's going to use to fill in the lower spot. So it won't, the site won't be any higher than what's there right now. If anything, it's going to be lower down into that. It's going to fill in that base with the higher mounds that are up on top. So that likely the civil work, performing all that work will take roughly 1 to 2 weeks. And once the grade's set, we mobilize the racking crew and the electricians. A site this size would take 3 days of pile driving, where they'd be pounding posts using pneumatic insulation to get into the site. And during that time, we'd be trenching our conduit path through the arrays. And all in all, together, this site in and out should be about 6 to 8 weeks. The heaviest, probably most noticeable item will be, of course, the civil work, balancing that site. And then the post pounding will be for the first 3 days. And then after that, it would be pretty unnoticeable. It'd be lots of handwork, mounting the modules, mounting the inverters, pulling wires in.
Thank you, Trevor.
Are there any other questions from any of the commissioners? All right. Why don't we take public comment?
Commissioner Dennison, this is Jose Reynoso. Earlier, you had a question about the backfill, and I wasn't sure if that was addressed to me. I just wanted to make sure that your concerns were addressed. I don't know if you had any, if that was a question directed towards me.
At a previous meeting, there were concerns from citizens that the project had already started. And so I was sharing that the work that's being done today at the city yards was not part of this project, that it was in fact county performing work on the dam.
So, I heard that, and I just wanted to clarify for you. So, county is doing work at the dam, and they are using our city yard as a staging area for what they're doing. But the infill of that basin is more to do with our activities. We still average 300 to 400 water leaks per year. So we have a vacuum excavator that goes out every time we have a leak, and it'll suck out. It'll excavate the main line, and creates a lot of mud, and we need to dump that someplace. So we started dumping that became our staging area. And with 400 to 500 leaks per year over the last 4 to 5 years, that's where the majority of the infill for that basin that's being filled up has come from.
Great. That's a much more detailed answer that affirms for the citizens that this project was not already started ahead of this approval process. So thank you. Any other questions, comments? All right, let's take public comment. At this time, any person may address the Planning Commission concerning this particular agenda item. The Commission welcomes your attendance and participation. When addressing the Commission, please begin by providing your name and address for the record. Please keep comments to no more than 5 minutes to assure an orderly and timely meeting. Copies of the agenda are available for your convenience on the city's website. The Commission will only be commenting and taking public comment on this particular agenda item. This agenda item was placed on the agenda greater than 72 hours prior to this meeting. If you would like to call in, the phone number is 669-900-9128. Meeting ID 851-8278-0306. with the password of 091024. Please dial in now and indicate if you have connected to the meeting by raising your hand, or if you dialed in *9. We'll give the public another 90 seconds to dial in. Once again, at this time, we are taking public comment for conditional use permit 21-01. At this time, any person may address the Planning Commission concerning this particular agenda item. We welcome your attendance and participation. When addressing the commission, please begin by providing your name and address for the record. And please keep comments to no more than 5 minutes to assure an orderly and timely meeting. The phone number, once again, is 669-900-9128. Meeting ID 851-8278-0306 with a password of 091024. Please dial in now for public comment. If you are watching on TV or on our live stream, please mute your TV or computer speakers to avoid feedback. If you dialed in, press *9, or from your computer, raise your hand. Do we have any callers at this time?
You do not have any callers at this time.
All right, then at this time, I will bring it back to the Planning Commission for deliberation. Anybody have any comments?
I'm happy to start. This sounds like a well thought out project that doesn't look like it's going to impact the neighbors at all, and won't compromise our ability to provide clean water. So it's a win for the city and win for the environment and win for everyone around. So I think it should be approved and proceed.
Any other commissioners?
Yeah, I can go next. I concur with Bob. I think it's a great project. Looking forward to getting it done. Just looking forward to getting the 2017 project done. So I'm glad we're actually going to see one happen. Hopefully we'll get some more in town and we'll get some electric car chargers. One thing I do also want to comment on, the findings are very easy to make. I don't think there's any concerns there. With regard to the negative declaration, I appreciate the city being careful and dutiful in making sure we comply with everything, just as we'd have somebody from the public do. But I gotta say, I think this thing was overkill. It's a mitigated negative declaration of hundreds of pages long. We didn't need to do that. This could have been a pure neg deck, and it would have been fine. And I think that's not a disservice or a bad statement on the city. I think we did a great job. I think it's more at the state level. We need to think about why we're causing people to spend thousands of dollars and take a lot of time to do environmental studies over people who are putting in solar panels to help the environment. It's sort of counterintuitive and unhelpful. But that little diatribe aside, I'm happy to vote in favor and support this project.
Commissioner Dallas, anything to add?
I think it looks good and all the paperwork seems to be in order, and yeah, who doesn't like solar, especially at such a reasonable cost?
Great. I concur with all that's been said. So I guess I would look for a motion. Let me rephrase that. I would look for a motion to approve conditional use permit 21-01, a solar photovoltaic project located in the city yards.
Also move.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you for the presentation by city staff. Well thought out and great presentation.
And thank you to the Planning Commission. This is a very exciting evening for a lot of us.
All right, next we have General Plan Amendment 21, a discussion on General Plan Amendment 21-01 and Zone Change 21-01. Do we have a presentation from city staff?
We have a PowerPoint presentation. Josh Wolf will be delivering that presentation for the commission. And it's following up on some of the questions and discussion items from our prior meeting on June 3rd or May 20th. So Josh will load up that PowerPoint now.
All right, good evening, commissioners. Tonight we'll be continuing the discussion from our last meeting for land use and zoning map consistency updates, which is General Plan Amendment 2101 and Zone Change 2101. As an update, I would also like to say that the notice for the first public hearing of the General Plan Amendment and Zone Change has been published to Mountain View News. Also, the notice for the public hearing of the Municipal Code Text Amendment for the Residential Entrepreneur Overlay has also been published. Both are scheduled for June 17th Planning Commission meeting. Tonight, we'll just be talking about additional information to supplement last meeting's presentation. Tonight, I would recommend that the Planning Commission discuss these changes and this information and provide direction to staff regarding what changes to make. So the first was from Quadrant 2, which is a vacant parcel currently having a land use designation of residential low density, RL, with a zoning of residential canyon. Its main characteristic is that it is steeply sloping terrain, dropping approximately 42 feet from the Mount Wilson hiking trail and drops into the rear yards of adjacent residences. It is city property. It is currently being managed by the fire department for brush clearance. And based on this information, we have several options that we can take. The Planning Commission can update the zone to R1 to be consistent with the current general plan land use. They can update the land use to residential canyon to be consistent with the zoning map, or they can make an update to the zone and land use to be hillside given its characteristics. I'll move on and complete my presentation, and then we'll make some discussion later on. Next, we have assessor's parcel number 19 of the Stonehouse Road tract. This is what we left off from last time in Quadrant 2, where there is a settlement agreement between the city, CS Stonehouse, and CS1 Carter back from 2010. This describes a clearly defined portion of the property, specifically parcel 19, which is to be dedicated as open space. But the parcel and the tentative tract map is still in tentative status, and it doesn't have a final map recorded. Therefore, it is still one singular parcel. Once the subdivision map is final and recorded, then this change can be reflected very easily through a general plan amendment. In the meantime, though, the Planning Commission may consider a line of division that is clearly distinguished as a tentative line rather than a normal lot line or parcel line in order to separate the land uses and zones per the settling agreement, which would closely match the land use map that we have in our general plan. So given that information tonight, the commission can update the land use. Again, as a reminder, the land use is a split between open space and residential hillside. So to make consistency with our zoning map, the first option is being to update the land use map so that the parcel in whole is a hillside land use. Secondly, they can update the land use and zoning map as described here and on the slide to have that tentative split between the parcel as described by this red line on the slide. Excuse me one moment. Next, I have the Richardson House and Lizzie's Trail Inn, which we had touched on last time. This it's also in quadrant 2. The parcel does not have any inconsistency in the land use and zoning, where it is residential low and single family residential. This property, this is city property, and the structures are leased for the purpose of maintenance and upkeep for 2 museums managed by the Sierra Madre Historical Preservation Society. So given that information, the Planning Commission can either update the land use to municipal and the zone to civic and city park, given its characteristic, or they may make no changes to the land use and zone since it's already consistent. And finally, from quadrant 3, there is the parcel question adjacent to the British home. This is identified as lot 16 of block C of the Andrews subdivision, which is coincidentally identified in the Sierra Madre Municipal Code, codified by chapter 17.42 and by ordinance 1334 that specifies this parcel as an expansion of the British home specific plan. So really there's no action to take other than this is just kind of a maintenance and cleanup that was never reflected on our zoning map. So again, just to reiterate, the Planning Commission, it's recommended that the Planning Commission can discuss these changes and provide direction based off of the options provided to Planning Commission. And again, we won't be making any hard decisions tonight. This is just a direction for staff to take to be scheduled for their first public hearing on June 17th. And that concludes my presentation. If you'd like, I can leave this slide open so we can go over again what our options are for each of those parcels.
Yeah, that'd be a good idea.
Yeah, I think it'd be best if we took them one by one and we could look at the maps as we discuss it, because the maps are really handy.
I agree.
Should we do public comment at this point before we move forward and bring it back to the commission for discussion? Or do we want to wait, discuss it, and then make our final recommendation after we hear from the community?
Can we, I mean, this is a discussion item, not a public hearing. So if there's public that wants to talk, I think we should let them butt in whenever they want. I don't know if technologically we can do that, but the
I
more
believe
comments, better.
they just won't have the slide, so we'll stop at the end before we make our final recommendation, or do a recap at the end for anybody who doesn't dial in before that. That sounds good. Thank you. All right, you want to lead us through one at a time, Planner Wolf?
Okay, let's start with this first parcel I mentioned. This is the one adjacent to the Mount Wilson Trail. And again, as just a reminder, it's a highly sloping property currently managed by the fire department for brush clearance. The reason I gave one of the options as hillside is there are adjacent properties very similar in characteristic with a highly sloping terrain also owned by the city adjacent to Mount Wilson Trail that are zoned hillside and have a land use as hillside.
So that one you have the arrow on now that's just south of that is owned by the city as well?
Yeah, I believe this one has city ownership.
Okay.
This one.
It seems to me we should make these parallel, the same, and I would be fine with if these are all city owned and they're really steep and not buildable, making them the same as across the street, which is natural open space. But if other people feel that's too much, then I think hillside's a good fallback because it's similar to what's there, and it's the best zoning that you could build on for dealing with big slopes. But I don't think Canyon or R1 is appropriate.
I agree, because I'm familiar with this lot because I look at it every time I do the trail work. We were lucky to get some work done on it by CCC. I'd be fascinated to find somebody who would ever want to build on it. So maybe hillside because of its characteristics, but I'd rather see it used and by the city and used as a fire break and used as a way to mitigate the fire danger to the people at that end of the canyon, because that piece of land is right between them and whatever is on fire. I mean, they're right up against it. And whatever we could do to lower the fuel load, however we could use the zoning and land use to protect those residents and protect the city, I think we should do it. If it means hillside, that's fine because of its characteristics. If not, some way to make sure that it's maintained, because it hasn't been in the past, to protect the citizens.
I like that idea.
I agree. So sounds like that's the direction.
To reiterate, that was to be as hillside?
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
A dumb question on this one, if I may.
Yes, sir.
So there's been lots of concern about parking around the Mount Wilson Trail. It had been raised a number of times. Is this an area they could, I mean, it's hillside, I don't know how steep it is, but could that resolve the parking issues on the city streets? And something make it something like Bailey Canyon, the parking lot there?
I don't think you can even drive a car on that.
It's too steep, okay.
Much too steep.
Okay, that's I have a hard time picturing. I know I've walked by it a number of times, but I have not actually walked into it.
I don't know how easy it is for you guys to see on the slide here, but the left image is contour elevations, and they're very faint, but there's basically a 2-foot fall every 1 to 2 feet. So it's very steep. It's got like
It's a 45-degree angle. Yeah.
Wow.
Actually, the biggest hazard there is something's going to roll down the hill and take out a house.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. I also got a bit of information here from our Director of Utilities, Jose Reynoso, that the red line, or either in whole or some portion of it, there is an 8-inch water main somewhere on this division line. Just some additional information. I'm not sure if that was intended to be as part of the division line or what the deal with that was. But again, just to remind everyone, there are 2 proposals for this. Is 1, to update the land use to hillside in whole. And actually, let me go to where that quadrant is and I can show you what it looks like. So that is what's proposed, but this is where it is existing. You see in the northeast corner here, that same parcel is split in an approximate location of where that line I showed earlier was, but I think this is a little bit more crude of a line. I don't think it's as accurate as the one that we saw in our tentative parcel map. But the deal right now with this is that this is one parcel, but it has split uses of hillside and natural open space. And the 2 uses conflict with each other. So we're trying to come to a resolution on how to make these consistent. So the first option, as I described in the previous slide, was that we update the entire parcel to hillside, where a portion of it currently is hillside, and where the zoning in whole is currently hillside. Our second option is to make the zoning map look a bit like what we have in our general plan land use map right here, with some very minor alterations to this line, and to clearly identify this line as a tentative line.
Is that line the easement for the water main?
I'm not sure. Is Director Reynoso still with us?
That would make it a lot, that would make it a natural.
Director Reynoso has left the meeting, but he did indicate in chat that there was a 8-inch water main that closely paralleled that tentative line that we're referencing.
But it's not above ground. It's buried.
No, I've never seen anything above ground there, but if the city already has a main there, I think that would be a natural opportunity to make that the dividing line and to keep the easement open so for maintenance on the line.
Yeah, if there's an easement, it has a legal description, and we could follow that. I think I'm in favor of the latter proposal where we keep the split. I know it's not a favored option to have separate zoning on one parcel, but you do see it sometimes, and I think it makes sense in this case. And the line, as you indicated, should be marked as tentative. And then when they process a map to develop the stone house, that line can be made exact. But I think it would be unfortunate if, when we look back at the big quadrant and you see how much of that land going up the mountain is natural open space, if we change that to hillside, that would be a step backwards. So I'd prefer to keep it split with a tentative line approximating the water main, and then when the map comes through, we can finalize it and follow the new lot lines.
I agree with John Hutt.
I agree as well. I've hiked that area, and unlike the previous parcel we were talking about, I think that one could possibly be built on if somebody were aggressive enough. I don't think they could do the first one we talked about. So I'd rather keep it natural open space.
I guess my challenge with that is that there's already a building on there, and we're going to orphan the building by making it natural open space. Somebody could still buy this entire lot because it's currently one lot and it's for sale. And it seems the wrong thing to have somebody buy a lot with a house that's already natural open space where the actual residence lies. If they want to do anything at all to that area, then they're gonna have, they won't even be able to. They'd have to apply to have it zoned something different, which is going to create a situation where the land is almost untenable by the next owner, pushing this into disrepair. I'm really challenged with balancing zoning something open space when it already has a house and is on the market. So I'd love to hear the opposite side of that.
Chair Dennison, just to clarify, from our last discussion, we were talking about the Heflin residence. This is actually identified by this parcel here I have darkened a little bit and labeled as Heflin residence. From the aerial, this is where we saw that the house is. It's below this line and already part of that division. And from the aerial, I didn't see any structures in this portion that we're looking at as being as natural open space. So as I recall from our last discussion, we thought that there was a structure or a residence somewhere in the northern portion of that aerial in the natural open space, but it so happens that the Heflin residence is actually south of that.
All right, that's definitely different than I remembered last time. So I take back all of my comments about that.
Yeah, I think the last house is the one you can just see part of the lot of on the left-hand side of the picture. And then it cuts down to the Heflin property. That's their driveway that goes down to their garage in the house.
Right.
It's
that house is actually across the street from the one that we approved a couple meetings ago, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and
right.
That canyon is called Stonehouse Canyon, and you can hike it. I've hiked it a couple times, and parts of it are flatter, flat enough so that you could probably put a structure there, I guess. But I think it'd be better off as open space.
So then is the Heflin residence not part of this parcel? Or it is, but it's in the part we're designating hillside?
It is already designated as hillside with the zoning of hillside, and it doesn't have an inconsistency. And I think it matches the characteristic of what can be developed on it.
Okay. Yep, I was wrong in my understanding of this, and I agree that natural open space split with the hillside is probably the way to go here.
Okay, is that a consensus from all commissioners?
Yep.
Okay, moving on, Richardson House and Lizzie's Trail Inn. I'll backtrack to the map for where that is. It's in quadrant 2. And that was this little parcel at 165 East Miramonte. It's currently designated as residential low density with a zoning of residential single family R1. There's no inconsistency, but we thought the matter might be worth looking at if we designate it as open space, either constructed open space or perhaps even municipal civic city park.
I think it functions like a park right now. I mean, they're visitors and it's next to the park. I don't think anyone sees the difference between the two properties. I always thought it belonged to the city and was managed by the historical society.
Yeah,
Did I miss the resolution on that as to whether it's owned by the city?
it is currently owned by the city, but all the structures there are leased by or contracted through lease by the Sierra Madre Historic Preservation Society.
I'm in favor of turning it into municipal. Because that's what it is. I mean, that's how it reads. I agree. It looks like part of the park.
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Dallas. And Commissioner Spears, it looks like if you go there, it just looks like it's part of the park. There's no fence or anything. If we change that to municipal and civic park, that's not going to mess up the agreement with the historical society to operate it as a museum, right? That'll be fine.
I think there shouldn't be any impact.
Yeah,
regarding
so
rules.
then I concur. I think that's the right way to go.
So it'll just change the color on the zoning map, right?
And the general plan.
And the general
land use
plan.
map.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that'll reflect the way it's used, I think.
Agree.
Just as an aside or maybe tangent, but it's residential single family and it's owned by the city. So should the city choose and it be approved by the city council, potentially we could see construction of a single family residence or even an accessory dwelling unit. But you know, that's up to the city's decision to make. It does make more sense as municipal and civic city park.
It has an ADU on it now. They put this little shed in the back.
It has an accessory museum unit.
Yeah.
Okay, and finally, this one I don't think requires any real consensus or decision. It's just a matter of upkeep really to what our zoning map should show. I'll go back to our zoning map quadrant 3 here. So it's 676 Ramona Avenue, and I've included it here as what is the proposed change. If I can go back, I can show you what it looks like on the zoning map today. Or there's actually perhaps some inconsistency on some zoning maps, so it actually is just a real matter of upkeep on the zoning map to make sure everything we have available to the public is consistent. And unless I hear otherwise or want to discuss on that, I'll go ahead with doing that.
So I think if memory serves me correctly, that parcel came before us once many years ago. And the adjacent homeowner to the west did come to the meeting and ask a bunch of questions, but in the end, it was resolved that it was not going to impact them and they were okay with it. But sometime in the last 17 years, if we had a meeting that revolved around that piece of land.
I believe there was a conditional use permit done in 2012,
There you go.
which also I think amended the specific plan to include that lot 16 of Block C of Andrew subdivision.
Yeah, Bob, and the resolution in the packet has your signature on it, so I think you remember correctly.
Okay.
So you're just gonna change it to have that check mark on it, that cross-hatch thing.
Yes.
Right.
So I think this isn't even a matter that we have to decide upon. I think it's just a matter of regulatory cleanup.
Yeah, I agree.
That would conclude all of what we need to discuss, I believe.
I thought there were two other items. Maybe I missed them, but I thought that we were going to look at, there was a house that was potentially included in the submission packet. The one that actually was sent to us as one of the houses potentially for redevelopment. But in the map that you showed us, it wasn't included, and we had remembered it being included in the packet that was being sent to the state. Just below the gas station.
That was not included. That's, Josh, that is the property that was for sale, I believe.
Is this on South Baldwin?
Yes.
Yeah, so the only thing we came to a consensus on from last discussion was that instead of it being, oh, hold on, you can't see my screen. It was one of these orange properties, but I think we're talking about all of them in this sense, is that instead of them being R1-15, that they just be R1.
Okay, and then the other one was actually, I think, 2 streets up. It was that end house on Suffolk that had been included in the packet for RENA numbers. And so you were going to double check whether it was or was not included so that we didn't run afoul of the RENA report.
I believe it.
Changing the zoning of a house that had been submitted.
Right. I believe we, Claire and I looked at that and I think it was included.
So then does
As a
rezoning,
priority site.
since it's listed here as a rezoning, is that going to cause us problems with it being a priority site?
It should not, because if the density would be higher.
So we're gonna change it from R3 to R3H?
Yes.
Okay,
The minimum, the base density would be R20.
okay. And that matches the rest of Suffolk, right? Or the first part of Suffolk?
The first part of it, yes.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay, and then just for clarity, that's going to be part of our housing element, not part of this consistency update.
Now we can make the change now as part of the consistency update, because we're going to have to go back and do this for the priority sites upon adoption of the housing element.
Okay. So from a sequencing perspective, we're okay.
Yes.
I think that was the question that we had exited last meeting with. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so with that, we can move forward to our first hearing on this item, and I will incorporate all of the changes we had discussed tonight and last meeting.
All right. Maybe we should open it up one last time for community input. At this time, any person may address the Planning Commission concerning this specific agendized item. The commission welcomes your attendance and participation. When addressing the commission, please begin by providing your name and address for the record. Please keep comments to no more than 5 minutes to assure an orderly and timely meeting. Copies of the agenda are available for your convenience on the city's website. To call in, simply dial 669-900-9128. Meeting ID 851-8278-0306 with the password 091024. Please dial in now and wait for public comment to open for your desired item. If you are watching TV or live stream, please mute your TV or computer speakers to avoid feedback. If you dialed in, dial *9 and from your computer, raise your hand. Again, at this time, we're just giving the public a chance to dial in and give community feedback on General Plan Amendment 21-01 and Zone Changes 21-01, a discussion which had been continued from May 20th. To provide comment on this, 669-900-9128 with the password 091024. Please dial in now and wait for public comment to open for your desired item. If you are watching on TV or on our live stream, please mute your TV or computer speakers to avoid feedback. If you dialed in *9 from your computer, click raise hand. Do we have any callers at this time?
No callers at this time.
All right. Planner Wolf, do you have all the information that you need from us and the guidance for putting together the first reading for the next meeting?
In terms of first hearing, yes. So we're going to be including everything that we had from last discussion and today's discussion all as one staff report. All of the changes we had talked about from those as land use maps, zoning maps, quadrant by quadrant, in whole for both the zoning and land use maps. And we'll be seeing a tabled out version of what is changing parcel by parcel.
And I understand that we've noticed both in the local newspapers as required, as well as sent postcards to residents that would be affected by this. Is that correct?
Yes, we sent postcards and we started hearing phone calls regarding the subject. Just for informational purposes, I don't think anyone is either in favor or against this. We're just providing information to those callers, to those people interested.
Very well. And Mr. City Attorney, you're comfortable that people who live within this range or would be affected by any of these decisions because they're being made en masse will be able to participate in this vote?
Yep, that's correct.
Great. All right. Any other questions, comments, concerns from the commission on this?
Couple things. First, I just want to say thanks to staff. Once again, this was a really good presentation, really responded to the questions that we had and made it really easy for us to get this done. So thanks a lot for that. Second, a few people have asked me what's going on with this because they're sort of confused and asked also if it has anything to do with the monastery. This doesn't have anything to do with the monastery. This is all about just cleaning up stuff from the general plan and making our land use zoning map and our general plan map consistent. So this is really a sort of housekeeping measure. And encourage everyone who's interested to come and participate, I guess, virtually still on our next meeting. We thought we were going to have a live one, but participate virtually and make sure all the changes are what everyone's okay with.
Any other comments from any of the commissioners?
No, good job.
Yes, great presentation. All right, with that, we will move to Planning Commission reports. Do any commissioners have any reports? All right, then we will turn it over to Planning and Community Preservation staff report.
Sorry, I didn't get my mute button off in time. I just wanted to note one thing. We got an email comment about one of the projects that's being reviewed by staff, and the nearby property owner said that it should be agendized for an in-person public hearing with the Planning Commission for this. And I think that there might be people in town who don't know what's going on with how those things are being processed, and I just wanted to clear that up. There was a zoning change that was done at the end of last year, and it's not reflected on the city's website yet because the municipal code doesn't get updated that fast. But things that used to come to the Planning Commission for design review approval are now being approved at the staff level. And so if somebody wants that item to come to the Planning Commission, they either need to appeal it after it's approved, or they need to convince the director to direct it up to the Planning Commission, which the director can do. And I don't know what the appeal cost is. I looked on the city's website. I didn't see it either. Maybe staff could tell us.
The appeal fee was also revised at that same city council meeting to $500.
$500. Okay, so
instead of 75% of the original application fee.
right, which would have been a lot more.
Mhm.
Right. So if anybody wants to appeal that, and I'm not speaking about that particular project, any of these projects, you can go on the city's website, look at what information is there, go into the city hall and get more information if you need it, and you can appeal. That's how the process works now. This stuff is not going to automatically come to the Planning Commission.
I would like to recommend though that maybe we do some modifications, because I was stopped by someone who used to be on the fire department with me, who lives on Grandview. The house behind him is going to be built 5,000 square foot. And the family was concerned that the runoff from the property was going to continue onto their property. And, I directed them to come down to City Hall and ask. And as I understand it, the application that exists in City Hall doesn't include all the finals on runoff and things like that. While it does have topography, it doesn't have, where the groundwater is going to go. So, she got back to me and said, well, they don't know for sure because it's part of the next step. And if we're going to send people to staff to City Hall, they should be able to provide the answers. That's what the public hearings were all about, so that the people with questions could ask the people doing the development, well, how's this going to impact my life? And this current solution, I think, doesn't provide for the needs of everybody who has questions, especially with new houses, a brand new house, going up. I don't think that, and so either we need to ask for more information from the developers and people like that so that the city staff can explain it to them, or we may want to modify the opportunities for the public to understand what's happening in their neighborhood and to their property, to what's going on around them.
Yeah, one of the things that we were looking at is, at least for new construction, revisit the review authority back to the Planning Commission. I think that would probably be the best approach to resolve some of these issues. regarding grading and drainage LID requirements. That's true. This particular submittal had a LID prepared by a licensed architect as a conceptual LID component. And they wanted to defer that to the building plan check phase of the project, which is typically what does occur. In many cases, the commission has approved projects that had conceptual LID locations. And that's what this is.
Yeah, I would, I mean, if staff is going to be put in this position, I would like them to at least be able to open up a set of drawings and say, this is what they're going to do.
Mhm.
I think that would assuage the concerns of citizens who are downhill from whatever's happening. And so you may want to modify what you ask for if you want to, I mean, this is assuming that staff has got all this time to answer all these questions, because I don't know, it seems to me like staff is going to take the brunt of a lot of unhappiness about things going on in people's neighborhoods. And the advantage of putting it in front of the commission is that they can yell at us all we want to, and we're not being paid, so it's not going to cost the city a lot of money to put up with it. And they have a sense that they had a hearing, that someone listened to their problems.
Right.
And I think what their expectation of staff is that that somehow it's going to change. And they tell us stuff all the time, and it doesn't change the project. They don't always get what they want to, but they have the sense that they were heard, and there was a discussion about what their concern was, and it was, quote, addressed, even though it wasn't solved. Two separate concepts, but
Right.
that's all been taken away from us. So I don't know what, I should send staff a lot of ibuprofen, I guess.
We'll take that under consideration and see what we can do to modify our requirements to submittal requirements to require a full and complete LID.
I think to the extent also we could put all the project information on the city website so that residents can look without having to come down to City Hall, and that's going to be easier for residents, but it's also going to be easier for staff because we're not going to have to dredge all the stuff up. We can just upload it once and people can look. And I think some of this stuff, I hope people can be addressed by just looking at the plans. Again, we're not supposed to talk about the individual projects, but I looked at some of the projects that are on the city's website, and some of them I looked at and go, oh yeah, it looks fine. And I think that kind of level of just being able to look and review, especially if it's a house that's near you, can also give people some comfort.
Yeah. Any other questions from commissioners regarding this topic?
All right, then we can turn it over to the Planning and Community Preservation staff reports.
So on our June 17th meeting, we will have our public hearings for both the land use map and zoning map amendments, including the municipal code text amendment regarding the residential entrepreneur overlay zone. And we are also going to include a discussion item that was addressed at the May 25th City Council meeting regarding the appointment of youth commissioners to the boards and commissions. So we'll discuss that then. So that'll bring up the total to 6 commissioners. That 6 youth commissioner would be non-voting commissioner unless, or sit in as an alternate if we did not have all 5 members of the commission present. The other thing I wanted to mention was that wanted to announce again the senior survey. And let me actually bring this up on screen. And is everybody able to see that? I'm not able to see it. Here we go. So essentially, what we are doing is conducting a senior survey for the housing element. So far, we have received 60 comments on our survey, and it's addressing whether or not the seniors feel that there's enough affordable housing in the community, if more senior housing is needed. So there's about 12 questions that we could address, and we'll keep tabs of that, include that in our housing element. So that is the link to the website that people will be able to take that survey and submit it to us for inclusion in the housing element update. And that concludes my comments.
All right. And anybody have anything else before we adjourn? Then I will adjourn this meeting until our next regular meeting on June 17th.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.